right, everyone. Welcome to the part 2 of our clinical Savant series with Dave Seaman. So if you missed the first episode, we kind of got deep into chiropractic neurology, which is where Dave got his start, where he got his cut his teeth with chiropractic, and then eventually basically led him into this nutrition world. And so what I think would be cool is we kind of got into it a little bit in that first part, but maybe take us into you saw Barry White, and then that piqued your interest on the diet's basically role in inflammation and when it comes to musculoskeletal injuries.
So the first thing I did was, after he listed this 7 chemicals or whatever they were that activated nociceptors, and so I recognized lactic acid, so it'd be a mitochondrial thing, and there was plenty of work on back then. It's actually, if you're low in, like, if made animals deficient in B1, they would have lactic acidosis, a low grade version of it. There's certainly increased their lactic acid production higher than normal. And then the fatty acid stuff is pretty obvious, but then I had to look at bradykinin and other things like cytokines eventually. And so I started looking at each of those chemicals, and I tried to track back how they were produced by the cells and what drove their production. Some were direct precursors, like fatty acids are direct precursors to prostaglandins, but cytokines are pro-inflammatory proteins for the most part that are released based upon noxious stimuli. And so in that scenario, it's not like your diet is going to influence the production of prostaglandins, cytokines, in terms of actually being precursors. But if the diet is inflammatory, it'll cause cells to dump cytokines. Mm-hmm. Just like cytokines are dumped, like right now in this whole COVID era, one of the killers is called the Cytokine Storm. So you have this overproduction of cytokines, and what caused them to be overproduced is overeating sugar, flour, refined oils in an acute state. But once one crosses into obesity, they live in a low-grade hypercytokine state. And that's why they're more likely to die of COVID or the flu or anything else.
Any virus,
or why they do poorly after surgery, or why they will not be...
Autoimmunity.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. Or why you just have a patient who is maybe borderline, hasn't been diagnosed with diabetes or anything like that, but they just don't respond to all the manual work. And that's when you got to turn them on to, getting their lifestyle back in order. Mm-hmm. So it was Barry White who got me going in that direction. I just started going to the library, and it was like every free moment I was there. I forgot to show you, I'll show you later, the piles and piles of papers.
We saw his library. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, we'll have we did a video tour of his garden, of his library, all that stuff. And so I'm holding in my hand, if you're watching on the video, I've got a lime that we picked from his tree right now that I keep smelling. It's just amazing. So
yeah, so for me, when I think about my yard, I don't think of it as being a garden, because I don't really... Garden is what you plant in the dirt.
Sure.
And like vegetables. These are all trees.
Yeah.
So it's like a tree farce.
This is a garden, bro.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just semantics.
I
just think it's like a mini orchard.
There you go.
This is a garden, guys.
Okay, garden.
Yeah.
Orchard, garden, whatever the hell you
garden
call
it is. Yeah.
So anyway, where were we? Pile of papers. Very like.
Yeah. So I started just going in these papers, and I'm like, man, and then I literally relearned physiology and biochemistry and nutrition from the perspective of inflammation rather than the perspective of food. So I was still like, this food's good for you or that food's good for you in my initial part of it, but then I realized that a donut, if you had a donut, if it was gluten-free donut, it wouldn't do anything to you.
Right.
If you had 10 of them, you'd have an inflammatory reaction.
Moderation.
But if you had one, it wouldn't do anything to you.
Right.
So it's not like the donut is bad.
Right.
It's bad when you have them legitimately in excess.
This is true for wine too.
For wine too.
Cheers.
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 For wine too. So it's not like everything in moderation, because that would be kind of stupid. I mean, everything, no. Like healthy food in moderation.
Golf in moderation.
Well, how about this? Healthy food in moderation. That's pretty stupid.
That's pretty stupid.
Right? Yeah. So you want to have mostly healthy foods, and then a small little bit of cheating. Mm-hmm. And so initially I was trapped by, this food is good, that food isn't good, don't eat this because it's bad or whatever. And then finally I got to the point, it took me, I don't know how long, so I started the White experience was 87. So that's what, 34 years now?
He's the math guy.
Yeah, 34 years ago. Yeah, so 34 years ago. So it probably took me until 10 years ago to realize that diet is really just about normalizing body chemistry, which I mean is it's pretty obvious. But if you use inflammation as the marker, it's much easier than just saying normal. I mean, what body chemistry are you going to measure? And so then, so now my view is, because people say, well, what's in the DeFlame diet? What's your diet have? Like, well, I mean, it has what every diet has. So it's not like a diet. You can be a vegan. You can be an omnivore. You can be, an Eskimo in the middle of winter up there for 8 months of the year, whatever, and you're eating mostly walrus meat. So all those diets are DeFlame diets. So DeFlame is the outcome of eating. The overall outcome, not just like, well, I drank too much, therefore I'm inflamed. Now you had an inflammatory moment. Since we're all normal weight and relatively healthy, if we drank a bottle of wine each, we may have a hangover tomorrow, but we would get over it and we'd be fine the next day. And we'd be able to go out and play golf and be active. But if you take an obese diabetic who drank a bottle of wine or more and has a hangover, good luck them getting out of bed the next morning and moving around. Because they're living in a chronic inflammatory state, and then they burden themselves more heavily with additional inflammatory foods. So that's a much better way to look at it, so one does not get trapped in like, this is good, that is good, this is bad, that's bad. What's the best superfood? What a dumb question that is, because there is no such thing as a superfood. Because think about it like this: if there was a superfood, then what did the Eskimos eat all winter long? Friggin' blubber.
Right.
Is blubber a superfood?
Right.
Right? Is walrus meat a superfood? Right? So that doesn't make any sense. Like, what's the most powerful food? And they say, well, you got to eat blueberries. And oh my God, I don't eat blueberries. I'm not going to have a superfood. And I don't like blueberries. And then people are like catastrophizing about eating friggin' blueberries.
How do you convince your people that the DeFlame diet isn't necessarily like a fad diet, that it's actually a lifestyle change, and how do you get them to buy in for long periods of time?
The easiest way to do it is just to do anthropometric markers and lab markers, depending upon what you do. So let's just say, so I would, for the most part, I'm going to guess maybe 10% of chiros regularly order blood work. So you're not going to be doing lab work, right? So what should you do? Well, it turns out that waist hip ratio, waist circumference, blood pressure, and body mass index robustly correlates with ongoing inflammatory chemistry. So you give a patient, tape measure, and you can get a paper tape measure from the dollar store, right? And then you just say your goal for your waistline is this. You want to have your waist hip ratio being below 0.8 for women, below 0.95 for guys. So you want to temper your pro-inflammatory foods so that you get into that range and stay there. And that you ever have to worry about measuring any chemicals if you don't want to. Because again, most don't really want to, because they start to freak out. Like, what does this mean? I'm not a nutrition guy. I'm not a lab guy. And that holds true for DCs, acupuncturists, physical therapists. MDs do all kinds of blood work, but then they don't tell people to change. I mean, think about this whole COVID thing. Think about how psychotic this really is. I didn't know that obesity and hyperglycemia, particularly together, creates a pro-inflammatory environment that makes viral infections worse, makes people... So here's what it does. If you're obese and diabetic, you're more prone to viral and bacterial infections. Once you're infected, you stay infected 100% longer. Because obese people tend to breathe heavily, they blow off more viruses. And because of their obese body chemistry, they're unable to process the viruses. That's why they stay infected longer. And because of that extra time, they now create... the obese hyperglycemic body creates viral mutations.
So you've been kind of pushing this message the last couple months. I was just curious to ask you, have you had any pushback?
Yeah, it's shocking the amount of morons out there. So when this book came out, the DeFlame Diet for nutrition for immune health, it was in June of this year, and so I posted on Facebook and I said something about just masturbators, or something like what masturbators are missing. I just forget how I created the post. And so I get posts back like, would you tell your surgeon not to wear a mask during surgery? I'm like, what? What does that have to do with getting rid of an obese? Because like that, the cover of this book is like really cool because it shows this big fat guy, right, with the viruses attacking him. And they couldn't capture that. And the reason why is because the authoritarians who have been running the whole COVID show never told anyone to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a believer in the authoritarians, and the authoritarian, like if Lord Fauci didn't say, hey, we should all lose weight, well then of course we shouldn't, because my master didn't tell me that I should.
Right.
So that's the kind of pushback I see. Wow, I mean, short term, are you saying that masks are not good? I'm like, what are you talking about? What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about the obese body is the super spreader body. The obese population, they are the super spreaders,
mm-hmm.
and they're more likely to die.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get locked down, what are lockdown animals going to do? They're going to eat.
Yeah.
And drink.
And drink.
Cheers.
So how many?
Cheers.
So how many people left lockdown 10, 20, 30 pounds heavier?
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I posted something else recently. And it's like, yeah, but short term you got to do masks. Blah, blah, blah. Why is it like? One guy actually said to me, he's a chiropractor. So if you had a patient, would you tell them to wear a mask or lose weight? I'm like, you should stop practicing now. You don't have a brain.
Yeah.
You should. So in other words, you can't do both. Doing both is too complicated for this guy.
Right.
And then they say, well, no one's going to lose weight. I'm like, you don't even understand. Do you not think people should at least have the opportunity to know?
Right.
Yeah, at least say it. Yeah.
At least maybe if all the talking heads and all those guys didn't focus so much on the vaccine, and they focus on what getting healthy really involves,
mm-hmm.
and how it is. It's not just obese people are more likely to have a bad outcome. They are the spreaders of it.
Mm-hmm.
The super spreaders are obese people, particularly older obese people, because they're more inflamed, because they're inflammaging on top of.
Did you just coin a new term?
No,
there?
actually, that was by an Italian researcher named Franceschi.
That's really good.
Back in 2000, yeah. So I liked reading all his stuff too back then. He turned from inflammaging, so we can either anti-inflammage
mm-hmm.
or pro-inflammage.
Pro-inflammage.
Yeah. So if you're pro-inflammaging and you're obese and you're diabetic, you're screwed.
Right.
If you get infected. So
this is just across the board for. That's just virology kind of 101 almost, basically.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, even if this wasn't COVID era, that's just across the board. Chronic disease, chronic virology, all that kind of stuff.
But think about this, though. They knew back Spanish flu, 1918, the people who did the worst, obese. So this was tracked to me. They knew this all along, and then they did some studies. There was, they called it the Hong Kong and the Asian flu, were the names used to describe those two back late 50s, early 60s. What they find out, if you're obese and diabetic, you're more likely to be hospitalized and die. Then when they had the swine flu scare in 2009, turns out if you're obese and diabetic, you're much more likely to die. Now I didn't know any of this until the COVID thing, because we're viral disease on any of our brains, really? No. But when we get locked down, so you start looking at it, and I'm like, they've known this for 100 years? So this means that Fauci didn't know this, the chief of our virology world, right, in all those news conferences, they couldn't say, listen, we've known since 1918 for over 100 years now that if you're obese and diabetic, you're likely to die and you're much more likely to spread it, because they knew about viral spreading in obese people before COVID came along. Mm-hmm. So this is a horrific story. It's really, really, really disturbing, actually. So there's this family in, I guess, Central Florida. Father is a cop, and so they're all at home because of schools are closed. So the father would go out and, at work, he'd wear a mask. He would come home. He'd change his clothes in the clothes changing area from the back door or whatever. Put his clothes immediately in the washing machine. Take his shoes off. Disinfect his shoes. Jump in the shower before he would go into hang out with his family. So his daughter, morbidly obese, 12 years old, right? So everything they're doing, what they were told to do, the distancing thing, the masking. They did everything except stop overeating. So this 12-year-old girl catches it and dies. Can you imagine? And people, these idiots who gave me the pushback, I'm like, do you not realize that this family might have wanted to know that their obese children should maybe unobese themselves so they don't die?
Right.
It's
obvious, but yet it's not said.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Dave, let's get into the nuts and bolts then. So let's say we're chiros. We run labs all day long, Brett and I, and then we're lucky to have Dr. Fulano, our functional medicine doctor. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you were just gonna say, hey, let's just run an inflammatory panel on everybody, what are the markers that do have the highest credence? What are the markers that you are wanting to know on every single person besides the anthropometrics?
Okay, so it's the standard stuff: glucose, A1C, and then do postprandial glucose to make sure. Because the interesting thing is, you can be normal. You can have a fasting glucose of less than 100, but postprandially you can be over 140, which means you're pre-diabetic. So you want to do postprandials on people. You want to do fasting. You want to do A1Cs. You want to do triglycerides and C-reactive protein, vitamin D. I mean, those are really the biggies. If those are all normal, it's very difficult to be inflamed. Because if you were, your CRP would be up. So that really is it. Now, people don't just order those alone. You get a regular chem panel, throw vitamin D in there and CRP, and you're done.
Sure.
It's really that simple.
What about the people, do you ever see it that somebody is, maybe they have a higher BMI, they have the scales that we were talking about earlier, the waistline increase and stuff like that, but then don't have those inflammatory markers?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because obesity, there's like a toleration of body fat that people have. So you know that there are some people who are obese who are like really limber and athletic and they're really, really functionally pretty amazing. Right, but then you have people who are the exact same size who are disasters. Right, so it's just your body's toleration, your genetic toleration for the flame. And I think it has to do with I'll give you an example. And because we're talking about nutrition now, people will say, red meat is bad for you. Like, really? Red meat causes colon cancer. Really? Who told you that? Some master on the television told me that red meat eating causes colon cancer. Like, really? How come all the Eskimos and all the rest of them don't have colon cancer? Living on moose and deer, right? Right? I mean, how come they don't have colon cancer? So that's complete nonsense. So particularly they'll say, don't grill your meat. Don't because the grilling will give you cancer.
Yep.
So a study was
endotoxins.
So the some NIH guys, I think these guys were at Harvard actually, they looked at people and their likelihood for colon cancer, and they had them, they eat red meat. They did what test did they do? I'm trying to think now. Geez, it just fell out of my brain right now. What did they do? Oh yeah, so they looked at what it was called CYP1A2 and something called NAT2, N-acetyltransferase 2. So those enzymes, if they're overactive, it pushes you towards cancer. And so they took this population of people and they looked at NAT2 and CYP1A2, and they had them, and then they looked at the foods that they ate, and they found that red meat eating that would be grilled or charcoaled would only be a problem for you if you were a smoker and if you had a rapid phenotype for those enzymes that would rapidly transform potential cooked meat toxins into carcinogens. And so if you didn't smoke, there was no problem. So smoking was the big deal, the genetic marker. So, but if you were a smoker and you had the low enzyme activity, no risk for colon cancer. So the reason why I brought up is because you have these gradations of flame that's built in genetically. So some people are just rapid producers of pro-inflammatory cytokines.
How important, in your opinion, Dave, is getting grass-fed meat? Because a lot of us are, we're traveling. It's not always easy to have grass-fed meat. How important is that, do you think?
I would say if you can eat grass-fed meat, I would do it. In fact, I do, except when I'm out, right?
Is there a company you like?
No. I just go to wherever I go and I get grass-fed.
Okay. That's easy.
Something, whatever's at Aldi because it's half price.
Yeah.
Right?
They actually got good stuff.
But they never continually have the same thing. They're always like rotating stuff in and out.
I know.
He's a hater on
all. And you got to pay for your cart. They don't have bags.
I know, a quarter for a cart.
Jeez,
I know.
go.
Let's pay $10 a pound for grass-fed burger meat as opposed to $6 because that friggin' quarter's pissing me off.
One quarter. That's where it makes sense. If you don't think about it, it makes sense.
Screw those guys with the quarter. Let's go get the expensive stuff. So I would say that, I'll give you an example. My brother, we were at our parents' 50th wedding anniversary. We have pictures taken, and he calls me and goes, "Dude, I'm like the fat brother. I don't want to be the fat brother. What do I do?" So, ex Navy guy, works in a power plant. He's not a cook or anything. So I stopped eating sugar, flour, refined oil, and replace all that crap with vegetation. So you can eat meat, fish, chicken. I don't like fish. Don't eat fish. Eat chicken. Because there's an objection. Like, well, blow that off. No way.
They always get something.
Yeah. So do that, and just vegetables and fruit and nuts, and that's what I got to do.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it? That's it. So he goes from being like 230 down to 170.
Yeah.
He's about 190, 195 now. Slowly getting back. But he was living 80 miles south of Nebraska at that time. 80 miles south of Omaha. So you're talking some seriously...
It's my hometown, baby.
Okay, so you're talking beef.
Yep.
Beef capital of the world.
That's where it is, baby.
And so his little town was like 1,200 people, and they had one store. And so I didn't say get grass-fed beef.
Right.
I didn't say get organic anything, because that would have just made a total mess for him. Just because if you're eating like crap anyway, now you get hit with this, like, you got to get grass-fed meat, wild-caught salmon. Is that annoying? I have to turn that down. Okay. Wild-caught salmon, all the rest of it. I didn't tell me any of that stuff. So he goes, so I like grilling. Can I grill? Yes.
Yeah. Well, you just eliminate barriers is kind of what you're saying. Barriers.
Yeah. So he dramatically dropped weight, and here's what happened. Because he was remodeling this apartment house that he owned. Every time someone moved out, he would go back in and redo the whole place, tile everything. And he's like in agony. He had postnasal drip. He had adult onset asthma, and he went from, by the time he hit like 190, asthma gone, postnasal drip gone. He could sleep a full night, and all of his pants were gone. And he ate,
hard to argue that.
And he ate no grass-fed meat. And he ate no organic anything at all.
How about what, so in your mind, is it just the overall inflammatory state? What about, like, should we dive into food sensitivities now? That might be a good, we had a bunch of requests to talk about food sensitivities.
Okay.
Is there what do you see in your mind as far as the reliability is testing for food sensitivities? Now on Facebook you get you can send in your own blood sample and they'll test 100 different things and stuff like that. Where does that fall in your spectrum of long-term anti-inflammatory?
Okay, so that was the thing that I was into back in the 80s, late 80s, when I was in practice. I read this book, I took this class, listened to some cassette tapes, because that's what we had back then. And it was about food allergies.
Jeffrey Bland, or no?
It was a different guy, but it was the Bland era.
Okay.
Back then in the 80s, but it wasn't Bland. So I read the book, and then this one little section, it was about prostaglandins, and it said that when these people with defined, like 12 patients with defined food allergies, so they eat the food and they've got some got allergic proctitis, some got sinus stuff, just various eruptions occurred when they ate the offending foods. And so what they did was they fed these people Advil before they ate the offending food. No reaction.
Interesting.
Right. So I'm like, Advil blocks PGE2, so if you're flamed up and you eat something that is pro-inflammatory for you, you'll have a reaction. So that's when I realized that allergies were just a not everybody, but food allergies for many people is a manifestation of being just hyper-inflammatory in advance of eating the food. So if you deflame yourself, then you're more likely to handle foods better. Now, is that everybody? No. Is it a lot of people? A lot of people. And I've been with a lot of people. Like here, someone couldn't have red wine, cheese, and strawberries. And so this was when I did a 3-part class. It would have been, about 20 years ago I did this. And so it was a husband and wife, chiros. They came to this class 3 weeks. It was like, once, month 1, 2, 3. So by the time they came to second month, they're like, we got a story to tell you. I haven't been able to drink wine or have cheese or strawberries, but since I did this for the last month, I can eat all that stuff and I have no reactions at all. So I would say it's valuable to do after you do everything else, not initially.
Gotcha.
And
so once the overall inflammatory load decreases, then if there's still...
Right, then find some offending things. Now here's the other thing too that's problematic with those, because I actually used to order food allergy tests, and so one time I got like 8 tests back in one shot, and they were all like super high and all the same thing. So I called the lab, I go, how can everybody have the... He goes, oh, maybe we had the plates set too high. I'm like, what? Huh? So in other words, they were creating false positive allergies.
Mm.
So after that, I'm like, I'm just going to deflame people.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll deal with the other thing later, ultimately. And then do food elimination and do it actually practically, which I think is better anyway, because then it's a learning experience. So here's another thing that they did. This is back in 1991. It was published in Lancet. Swedish or Swiss researchers. They had rheumatoid arthritic patients. They brought them to a health farm, 50 of them, I think it was. 25, they just stayed there and chilled at the retreat, and the others they had them do a modified fast and just really basically made them like vegan, no grains, so it was like gluten-free type stuff. And they did an elimination diet. They wanted to see if there were allergies. So out of all those people, it was like 10%, 15% had allergies. Maybe it was even less. I forget the exact number now. So it's not about the allergies are your body's overreaction to an antigen, essentially. So no different than a virus. When you get infected by COVID, you want to be deflamed, because if you get infected by COVID when you're deflamed, you're probably not going to die or have a problem.
Do people ever have adverse reactions on the DeFlame diet? Just as an example, sometimes people seem to have trouble with nightshades and like those group of vegetables. Do you buy into that? What's your thought on it?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's just like the adjustment. Does the adjustment help headaches? I don't know. The next person who has headaches adjust them. If it helps, yes.
Right. Yeah.
So are nightshades bad for me? When you eat peppers, do you feel sick? Yes. Well, you got a problem.
Right.
So I've only met 2 or 3 people in my life that were legitimately nightshade disaster areas. Hey, you want to go turn that thing off over there as well, because I'm a technical.
So do you think it's a little bit overrated maybe on the whole nightshade thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. On the side there should be down. Yeah. So I think it's heavily overrated. That's why in this book, the original book, there is there's a chapter on nightshades.
Right.
And so think of the nightshade stuff. So tomatoes, right? Tomatoes and peppers and potatoes. So if you go to Italy, you're going to eat a lot of tomatoes, right? You go to any Italian household and they don't have gravy. Gravy means tomato sauce, right? There's tomatoes on everything.
Right.
You go to Greek diets, tomatoes on everything. If you eat the Mediterranean diet, you're eating tomatoes and peppers and eggplants. Not every day, of course, but tomatoes for sure if you're doing Mediterranean. So why isn't the Mediterranean packed full of people with brutal nightshade-induced conditions? Because it's rare. Mm-hmm. It's very rare. Right. There was an IT guy at one of the schools I worked at, and I was talking about it. He goes, I'm like, yes, because he was doing classes back and forth from Chicago. He goes, I go, yeah. He goes, I have this. He goes, if I eat peppers, I break out in like welts. I'm like, whoa, or something like very obvious.
Right.
And so I was like, tell everybody. So all the students hear this, and me too, because this is kind of rare.
Right.
So there's very few of those people, very few. Mm-hmm. So I would say that's, again, like the allergies, the nightshades. Those are all like down the low end of the problem spectrum. Mm-hmm. The problem spectrum is obesity, hyperglycemia induced by overeating sugar, flour, refined oils with a lack of vegetation. Mm-hmm.
So
pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. If the high end of normal is 99 for fasting blood sugar, the people that are living a really long time, what do you think the goal would be? I'm assuming the goal is not to be right at 99. What do you want to wake up and have your blood sugar at, Dave? What do you think is an ideal? People who are living a long time, what?
I would go for 85 or less.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Now, if all of a sudden, because you never really know, like let's say this healthy, beautiful child ends up with the Ewings, right, and dies, right? You have weird things can happen to people. So if all of a sudden I'm diagnosed with cancer, now I'm going for fasting glucose below 70.
Right.
and being in ketosis all the time until the thing is gone, if I'm lucky enough. So it would depend upon what I have.
Right, case dependent.
Yeah, case dependent, yeah.
And then in the world, we've changed our patient's diet, and the question that always comes up is what supplements should we be taking? I know there's big business in supplements.
Right.
So we used to do the Core 4 through you, which was basically a multivitamin, magnesium, vitamin D, and fish oil.
Yeah.
CoQ10 was kind of like on the fringe.
It was just an add-on to the core.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's still the thing?
Yeah, I would say, if people wanted to be absolute bare bones, magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D.
Right.
And I think once you hit 30, you want to throw CoQ10 in there, just because of just the mitochondrial benefits. And as we age,
I feel attacked that you looked at me right when you said 30, because that's like knocking on the door right there.
You are walking into it.
Damn.
Yeah. So
You left multivitamin out.
I'm saying the absolute bare bones.
Okay, bare bones.
Bare bones, yeah. Bare bones.
Because there was those papers that came out that said maybe a multivitamin perhaps was leading to some other...
Right.
Do you believe that, or that was just kind of a fault in the study, or...
I think, because I looked at those studies, and so I'll give you an example where the easiest one would be the Selenium vitamin E heart study. I mean, a prostate cancer study. They had 40,000 participants.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. So they broke them up into 4 groups of 10,000. And one got selenium, one got E, one group got selenium and E, the other one got placebo. And there was a slightly increased prostate cancer expression in the E, selenium, and the combo group. But it was, if you look at it in terms of absolute risk versus relative risk, it was like 1%, 2%. And so to me, it's kind of irrelevant. But what I would say, say taking a multivitamin. Let's just say that you're a guy and you're a flamer. You're 50, 60. You're obese and you're diabetic. And you're taking a multivitamin with iron in it. You're asking for free radical activity,
right?
Just because guys tend to not need any iron at all, right? Now you're taking iron, and so then none of those details were really looked at ultimately. Right. So if I take a multi, which I do, and I cycle multi, it's always without iron, just because guys don't need iron. You eat red meat, and you get iron, and so those studies were pretty weak. And if you look at the actual numbers, the absolute risk was minimal. And so for people, because absolute relative risk, let's just say, perfect example would be the statin study that it was called the Jupiter study.
Right.
And they gave half of them statin, half of them placebo, and they stopped it because it was people were dying on placebo. So I looked at the numbers; they're 10,000 each group again. So those who took the statin, will say 100 died. Those who took placebo, 200 died. That's a 1% absolute risk.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Relative risk is 50%. It's horrible. A 50% increased risk of dying of prostate cancer or a heart attack, whatever. Right? What was it? It was heart attack. 50% increased risk. So as the average person here is 50%. Oh my God, that's like half of us are going to die.
Statin right now?
Yeah. As opposed to it was 200 people died.
Right.
Who took placebo. 100 died who took the statin. Now those are not the right numbers, but relatively speaking, I just made it for easier math. So that's the kind of stuff that they do when they're looking at how terrible supplements are. They don't show the actual numbers, which is the absolute risk, which is the way the average person looks at things.
So what's on the secondary and tertiary levels of supplements if you were to have the money to be able to buy something?
Yeah. So I would say multi, which to me a multi you can cycle. You have to do it but to me, so multi I think is a cycler. And then magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D as the foundation, and then CoQ10. I'm not a big probiotic guy, although I'm not an anti-probiotic guy, because it turns out that the polyphenols in vegetation has the most profound modulating effect on our gut flora. I think, and think of it like this too.
Eat more vegetables always.
Yeah. So before there was fermented food, there wasn't fermented food. So how did anyone's colon ever be healthy?
Right.
Right? I mean, someone had to like eat some rotten food.
Right.
You know, the poor guy couldn't smell. He started eating. It's like, kind of tastes weird, but
My gut feels great.
my gut feels really good. And that was where the Lactobacillus bulgaricus come from. The Bulgarians, the Bulgaricus. Yeah, I think it was the Bulgarian monks or whatever. You know, it's kind of where it started. They started doing the fermented foods there. So you go to Russia, you got the borscht. You go to wherever you go, you got fermented stuff. But before there was fermented, there wasn't,
Right.
and there was no ill health. So I don't think that probiotics are like a biggie. I'm not saying don't.
Right.
I'd say for women, this is what I would do. If I was a woman, I would cycle on and off regularly with the product called Femdophilus. Femdophilus the product is made from a company called oh crap, I'm not gonna remember it. But Femdophilus is the brand. The Femdophilus company, they buy it from this big acidophilus making company, and so it contains something called Lactobacillus reuteri, I think, and something else. Rhamnosus reuteri, I think it's those two. Rhamnosus and reuteri. And it turns out that, now get this, is kind of funny. So they take it orally, but it improves vaginal health. How does that work? People listening, watching, you take it in the mouth and it improves vaginal health. How does that work? How do you think it works, guys?
Gut.
Okay, that's just a one-word answer.
Yeah.
That fill in the blank would have been wrong. I would need more.
Gone.
So basically, if you look at the female anatomy, the anus is not that far from the vagina. It's only you're talking, right?
Right.
So these bacteria, they climb and they seed the vagina.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's called I forget the word, but they call it something by ascension. So they're climbing bugs.
Wow.
And plus you have the movement and sitting and everything else. So why wouldn't that have an effect on guys? Because there's a much more circuitous, mountainous, like forest you have to go through, right? So the guy's urethra is here, his anus is here, so you gotta go up, the forest, everywhere to get there. Too far, can't get there. But for women,
Direct track.
So basically, it's almost impossible to go through life as a female and not have a vaginal infection, right? So this has been found to be good for both candidiasis and vaginosis, bacterial vaginosis. Wow. So for women, I would absolutely cycle on and off with Femdophilus.
And when you say cycle on and off, what is your recommendation there?
See, it's just, I don't know. You take it for a month and don't take it for a month. Take it for 2, don't take it. It's just, there is no definitive prescription for it, ultimately. Okay. So, but the most important thing then for women, of course, is you got to be careful with the sugar, flour, and refined oils, because that creates the horrific gut flora that will still climb, via what they call ascension, and then create an unhealthy vaginal microflora. Yeah. So multi-cycle it, magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D every day. The Dophilus stuff, it depends upon the person. If you're eating a ton of vegetation, I wouldn't worry about it myself. And then CoQ10, and then depending upon if you're spicy or not, then you want to look at ginger, turmeric. And then
like if you run high, inflamed, or whatever it might be.
So and depending upon like I'm out of a. It's kind of funny. I just got a text that my that I got a delivery. I've thrown out my old juicer. I'm gonna get back into juicing. So when I'm juicing ginger and turmeric. I didn't show you. I got six spots where I've got ginger and turmeric growing back there also. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Holding out.
Yeah, they have. Well, they didn't grow yet. And turmeric, by the way, and ginger, they grow this high.
Yeah.
It's absolutely spectacular.
My wife and I are in a CSA, and they always leave the tops on it when they pull it. And so you get the roots of the turmeric and the ginger, and then you have these giant stems.
Yeah, it's just amazing.
My wife loves it. She puts them in a vase.
Yeah, even when you just like take off like at the end of the growing season, it turns brown and they fall over, and you just kind of like take it away or hack it before that, and you can smell the turmeric in the leaves. It's amazing.
A lot of people right now, you hear a lot about vitamin Z and zinc with the whole COVID thing.
Right.
Is there any benefit, do you think, prophylactically supplementing with C and zinc right now in an attempt to not get COVID or to decrease or dampen the effects from COVID?
So yes, for sure there, but just real quick with the ginger and turmeric, when I'm juicing, I juice those, so I don't take them. Right now, I haven't been juicing recently, so I take ginger, turmeric every day. So now, I was never really a big vitamin C guy, and the reason why is just because of all the hype. Is take vitamin C, take vitamin C. And I was like, the work on vitamin C is if you start to get cold symptoms and you start pounding vitamin C, it can kind of lessen it a little bit. And if you're pounding vitamin C, and you're like, this is what they showed, it's kind of cool, ultra marathoners. So these guys are like psycho runners, right? And so you beat yourself up and you're pro-inflammatory after one of those things because of the brutality. So if they took like 600 milligrams of C a day, and those who did that, way less, way less post-race.
And that's not that high of a dose. I mean, really, you know.
Yes, not at all high. And so when it came to, so the whole COVID thing got me back into that, going, okay, well, let me look at it again. And then I got into the stress literature, and it turns out that people who are stressed out need vitamin C. So I take 4,000 milligrams a day now on a chronic basis, and I will always do 4,000 to 6,000 a day.
Wow.
Yeah, because I'm basically, you know, I'm a little wound tight, right? So you got to know who you are. So if you're wound tight, you should be taking that amount of vitamin C, I think.
With the only risk being kidney stones and...
That's kind of rare, though.
Yeah,
it's pretty rare, though.
So no risk, really.
I don't think any risk. I'm not going to worry about that. I mean, it might be possible. I don't know what the incidence is of taking that dose of C and stones. I don't think there's an issue. What you have seen in the literature, though, is that when you take that amount of vitamin C, and they actually did this with 1,000 milligrams 3 times per day, so just 3,000 milligrams in people, and they had a stress panel, and they measured cortisol, and they found that when they're taking 3,000 milligrams per day, they felt less psychologically stressed. They're able to do the stress activity better, and their cortisol was lower. So I think that taking vitamin C, I should have said that.
In that, yeah.
Yeah, but historically I've just been magnesium, fish oil, vitamin D. Now absolutely vitamin C at 3,000, up to 3,000 to 6,000 milligrams per day. And the zinc, they gave zinc to, they called them elderly people. And it was 55 to 87. Like, damn, I'm elderly.
You're there, bro.
Now I'm elderly, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So they gave them, it was like 40 milligrams of zinc every day for a year. And they looked at the placebo versus the zinc. And it was like a 75% reduction.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, in viral infections, bacterial infections, because it's mostly viral stuff, right? So I would say zinc and vitamin C are absolutely good.
Is zinc toxic and too high level? Can you take?
Yeah.
I mean, do we need to watch it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But so these people did 45 milligrams per day, and so for me personally, I feel comfortable because you have to. It's not precise, right?
Right.
So for me, I'm comfortable taking 30 milligrams per day, and with zero worries at all. Yeah. So I throw those in there, and then iodine is an enormous issue for males and females, particularly for breast health. And it turns out that and I didn't know about this until maybe I guess 10 years now when I was teaching a female health class. Over at National, I started looking at breast health in great detail, and there was a paper I read. It was called I can actually find it maybe. It's worthwhile. Breast cancer book. It's worthwhile looking at the reference here. Listen to the title of this article. Did I put it? I can't imagine that's not there. Seriously, dude. Oh, I have it elsewhere in the book. It's actually in the beginning because it was such a cool. Here it is. Ready? Is iodine a gatekeeper of the integrity of the mammary gland? Journal of Mammary Gland Biology and Neoplasia.
And the answer is yes.
The answer is
The suspense is killing
absolutely
me.
yes.
Wow.
So what happens is that iodine, and this is for iodine adequacy is beneficial for all cancers, prostate for guys, the biggie, and breast for females. It turns out that, so if this is iodine, and this is EPA or DHA, iodine attaches to it to create what they call an iodo-lipid. And now this fatty acid is protected against oxidation by the iodine. Yeah. So everybody, unless they have Hashimoto's, should be probably doing 250 to 1,000 micrograms of iodine a day.
Do you do Iodoral, or what's the brand you use, or how do you?
I just use kelp.
Kelp. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really they're like
250 to 1,000 micrograms.
I do between 250 and 1,000 micrograms per day.
And would you test for that pre-dose? Did you run the lab to determine if they're?
Well, it's not. If you want to do that, the lab I recommend is called ZRT Labs. They're in Idaho, I think. His name is David Zava.
It's a urine test. Is that the one?
It's a blood spot test, and you have the urine challenge test where you just like collect all the urine. Pain in the ass, yeah. So this test I think is adequate to do. Plus they check for the autoimmunity issues. So if you have autoimmunity in thyroid, you don't want to take iodine.
Right.
I mean, some people can. I don't. I've not met any Hashimoto person who knows nutrition who can take it because it makes it worse. So the thing to do is to basically take selenium because selenium has a really. You can actually reduce the. If you get, I think if you get rid of gluten, but this was just taking selenium. It was like they normalized the what's it thyroperoxidase. It was went in the normal range.
Some people think there's like a balance between selenium and copper that you got to worry about. This
is 200 micrograms of selenium is the recommended amount for that. So I don't have enough experience to really know where that thing falls.
So not a big deal. It sounds like.
I mean, I don't think it's a big deal.
I got a burning question for you.
Yeah.
So there's some, the big thing now is anti-aging, and there's a lot of people, we won't name names, who are claiming that they may live to be 160 years old and all this stuff. So if you do everything right and you have decent genetics, what is your reasonable lifespan? Is it 100 years?
90 to 100.
Yeah, right. That's, yeah.
I can tell you just in my family alone, so I don't have it here, but my college graduations, right? So we graduated in May. So I finished year 22 in August. So I was still in year 21. I guess I was in year 22. Anyway, the point is, the picture from my college graduation was me, my father, his father, and his father.
Wow.
My great-grandfather was like 94, and he sat there in this brutal heat through the entire graduation ceremony of 600, 700,000 people.
With the suit on.
Yeah, with the suit on. Yeah. And so his son, my grandfather, died 88 because he just ate like crap and became obese, massive pot belly. My father is 85. He wants to hit 100. His mother's sister, my great aunt, she lived to be 100. So we got pretty good longevity genes in my
No pressure.
family. Well, but I'm like, so I don't know. I think I got that going against me. So I'm looking at 10 to 30, depending.
Subtract 5 for that.
Yeah, right. Because you're like this, you got to immediately subtract 5. So you got 5 to 25 years left, dude. So, what was I going? Oh shoot! I forget. Longevity. Yeah. No, I know. It was something about one of my. And then my father's brother ate horrifically pro-inflammatory diet. He was a really good athlete. He actually shot like a 72 or a 71 in, we'll call it October of 2011. Starts to feel unwell around Thanksgiving. Not much better during Christmas, but he didn't look well. And then February 12th, he's diagnosed with brain cancer. And so he died at 66.
Oh, wow.
So talk about a dude who abused his genetic potential.
Right.
Yeah. Because it's something like brain cancer, unless you're just a weird outlier thing. I mean, none of these cancers emerge in really healthy people unless you're an extreme outlier. So that's a problem. So lifespan-wise, 90 to 100. This 160 guy?
Yeah, come on.
He well, I don't know. Yeah, he's crazy.
Outlier.
Yeah.
What about epigenetics?
Yeah.
What role does that play, do you think, in us testing our patients and giving advice, that kind of stuff?
Well, I think that you can completely ignore the topic because really all epigenetics really means functionally is, so you have your genotype, and then when you express it to the world is called the phenotypic expression, right? So the genotype, let's talk about the colon cancer red meat study. The people who were smokers but had a low, it was called a low, what was the word? Well, a low enzymatic activity, they could be smokers and not get colon cancer. So they had, so the higher ones, they expressed, their phenotypic expression was brought out by the smoking and the grilled meat. So all epigenetics is you do stuff to influence your genetic expression.
Right.
Which I would just say, just stick with genotype and phenotype, because people think that there's this like structure called the epigenome structure. It's like, what are you talking about?
How about maybe let's rephrase that in at what point are you giving recommendations based on their genotypical profile?
Well, you have to get there. You have to do the whole gene profile. So really, you really can't do that, right? So then you just do a good health history, right? So you take my family, great grandfather, 95, 96. My grandmother's mother, she was like 92 or 3. I mean, they're all 90s, late 80s.
Right.
Healthy. You know, a little dementia at the very end. You know, but you're 90 or 100, whatever it is, you're gonna die.
Look at her.
So, but my uncle, who had the good genes, he pushed the envelope. Right. So when you flame up, you're going to express your genetic potential as the phenotype. And to me, that's how I would look at it, and I would avoid the whole thing. Because if you press somebody, they don't know what they're talking about, really.
Right.
And they just start babbling along. They start making stuff up, and it's like, what?
Right. So just to rephrase that, their past medical history and their family history is enough to make to at least get you in the right ballpark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely. Again, save for the outliers. And why focus on outliers?
No.
Right.
And that's what everybody does,
hooves,
is you focus on outliers. I remember I was this one class I was sitting in when I was working at one of the schools, and the admin guy is going through this stuff, and he says, well, let's take this condition, for example. I'm like, that's 1 in 10,000 people. Can we take a condition that's more common?
Right.
Because there's a chance that you may never have 10,000
Can we play the odds?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's no different than us if we're talking MDT. I mean, we're playing the odds every single day of life.
Right.
You got a derangement, or whatever.
When you hear hooves, you think horse, not zebra.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, MDT is perfect. So what? 70-80% are extension responders, right? Okay.
Why wouldn't you?
Well, let's go there.
Let's start there.
Let's get. Why go more complicated when we do not need to?
Right. No, I 100%. Well, Dave, let's as we were starting to kind of close on this whole thing, take us through the books that you got and your kind of your new what do you got for us right now?
Okay. So I started off with this original book, which is just
the DeFlame Diet.
And it's all about food, inflammation, and the markers and all the rest of the stuff. It doesn't go into specific conditions in any detail, just because it's about how to deflame the diet.
Right.
So the next book I wrote was this book, Weight Loss Secrets. I could have put it in here, but I don't want people to view this as the weight loss book, because you can be a vegetarian, omnivore, carnivore, and lose weight. You got to know the secrets, and the secrets are really the physiological and the psychological and the primordial drives that we have to eating. So this was the second one. Bless you.
Thank you.
Now in the first book, I said my next book is going to be a female health book. Bless you. And then I started writing about breast cancer. I'm like, oh, sorry. This was my female health book. Currently, is my stop there. I'm going to do another one eventually, but this was the next one, because I couldn't have a 150 page chapter in a book on breast cancer.
Right.
So this became just the breast cancer book, and then I wrote this book, which is my favorite actually, and this is the one that I think all PTs, DCs should actually memorize. This one here, and I'll give you an example of why this is an important one. Is because when you think about osteoarthritis, to this day, no matter where you go, PT, DC, it doesn't matter what school you go to, they always talk about it being a wear and tear condition, right? So when they actually looked at the literature, looked at patients and looked at OA, 90% of people who have osteoarthritis do not have joint trauma. How's that? 90%.
Wow.
So if you think about it, be called a wear and tear condition. So I have OA of my knee. And what's my recommendation if you go to an MD? You got to walk,
Right.
and you should take anti-inflammatories.
Mm-hmm.
Well, isn't walking more of a wearing event than sitting?
Yeah.
So if it's a wear and tear condition and non-inflammatory, how could the treatment be wear and anti-inflammatories?
Right.
So it's a completely ridiculous view. It's actually OA is a wear and lack of repair condition. And it turns out that osteoarthritis, osteoporosis, tendinosis, all your musculoskeletal conditions that are chronic basically flame up like atherosclerotic joints flame up.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so you would never say that, hey, don't exercise to increase that like shear stresses when you're running because that will cause atherosclerosis.
Right.
Right. So let's just say my brother who decided to like shred went out for a jog and died of a heart attack. You wouldn't say, don't exercise. Exercise causes heart disease. You would say he had heart disease and the exercise brought it out.
Right.
So if he had OA or tendinosis and went for a run, people would say, well, it's the wear. No, it's because he had atherosclerosis in his tendons and his joints.
Right.
That's why this book is really, really valuable.
And the title of that is Stop Your Joints, Muscles,
and bones from rotting.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And then this last one here is the immune health one.
And Dave, where can they find those?
Amazon for individual copies, or the DeFlame.com, my website, for volumes if they want to use it in practice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it, man. And then you also have an affiliation with Anabolic Labs.
Anabolic Labs, right?
Talk us through that and how they can, why you think they're so good and stuff like that.
So if you look at Anabolic's list of products, there's nothing like special, because there are always like these special products, right? When you ask me the stuff I think is important, I said nothing special, pretty basic.
Right.
But the thing is, you want to make sure the stuff's made right.
Right.
So about 15 years ago, I'm guessing now, Anabolic was their facility in Irvine, California, was the model that was used for the good manufacturing practices for an organization called National Products Association. So they have a GMP system that they developed for supplement companies where they can get GMP'd, and it was based upon anabolic stuff because they were like, well, they make drugs as well. So if you make drugs, you have to be very, very detailed.
Sure.
Because if you're making, say, codeine in a room, you've ever been to a manufacturing facility?
You took us there in Colorado.
Okay, cool.
Colorado, yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. I forget where I've been and who I've been there with. So, but you saw how detailed that was.
Yeah, it was crazy.
So what they do when they come and they expect it, like the FDA, and it's even more crazy, is the British organization. They'll come in with like a Q-tip and go underneath, inside the manufacturing, whether it be an encapsulator or a tablator, and they'll like swab it. Say what was made in here last, and they check it to see if they find any residue of what was made here the last three runs. Wow. And so if they have any residue, they get dinged.
Wow.
So it's like 20-30% of the money for anabolic is spent on cleaning.
Wow.
Because
like they're held to the standard of FDA, right?
Yeah. So you have the FDA now has a good manufacturing practices system for supplement companies. They don't audit everybody. They audit people randomly.
Right.
But if you want to pass the audit, then you want to pass what's called the good manufacturing practices, or have a good manufacturing practices certification from the National Products Association, because that certification gives you the FDA requirements and even higher areas in certain spots.
Wow.
So there's like 5 different companies, 3 or 4 professional companies that have that certification. But Anabolic has had it the longest because they've been making drugs since World War II.
Wow.
Yeah. So you'd be hard pressed to find any manufacturer that is better than that. Now they don't have every product out there that people want, but I don't really care because I'm a basic guy.
Right.
Like I don't need some special supplement that's going to tweak whatever it is. It's just all the crazy claims that are made that people make. So Anabolic is a really good company to work for because of the manufacturing quality.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well. We're going to draw this part 2 to an end. For me, it was enlightening. I don't know about you, Brett.
Oh, my God.
Holy
Unreal.
Smokes. We're really happy to be in Daytona with you, Dave, and thanks for taking us golfing. And thanks for showing us your orchard. Is that what you want to call it?
It's a garden.
It's a freaking garden. You got stuff growing that you can eat, man. That's
urban
a damn
food,
garden.
A suburban food forest.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh, a forest. All right, that's perfect. So anyway, guys, check out Dave's stuff. If you have a chance to see him speak, he's electric. He's uncensored, and that's what we love about him.
He was a pioneer, I feel like, in our profession. He was like the first one to start talking to the paleo diet before it was even cool to be on the paleo diet, right? So
anyway, keep adding clinical nutrition into your practice. Help your patients deflame, and your clinical results are going to go through the roof.
Absolutely.
So, all right, thanks, Dave.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
See you guys.
Appreciate it.
Yep.